I've always seen some things in there that were a little tenuous, maybe a little bit factually imperfect. But it seemed for a long time like there was generally an effort made to more or less get the facts right about what was included in my page. And I would say I really started noticing things gone completely awry when I really started to have what was perceived to be a breach with the political faction with which I had long been associated, at least in the public mind, which was kind of American liberalism, even the American left, surrounding my skepticism toward Russiagate, my disagreement with how Donald Trump was being characterized, this kind of notion that he was this unprecedented evil and that everything and anything was justified in the name of stopping him. And I kind of became an opponent of the liberal establishment and its orthodoxies and tactics. And what I began to notice was that things that were on my Wikipedia page for over a decade with no change, things about events in my life from 10, 20, 30 years ago that had never been altered, suddenly every sentence became a war to try and insert negative insinuations or all kinds of innuendo, all sorts of incredibly tendentious characteristics and descriptions about my work that were designed to be negative, to the point where my entire page became an ideological war because of the fact that my perceived political place in the ecosystem had shifted. And then I then began looking more into how Wikipedia functions and saw that some of these pages are written, I mean, we went through a couple of them only, and you can find, thousands of examples where it doesn't even seem like they're pretending anymore or trying to pretend to any neutrality. Amazing. I'm just wondering, when did you start noticing that it was that extreme, and if you could talk about some of the ways that is accomplished?
Okay, well, it's very gradual. It's really, really hard to put a particular date on it. I first noticed that it was taking a really over-the-top biased point of view on when it shifted from the neutral point of view to I guess I would call it a scientistic point of view on any sort of controversial issues in science. The establishment view on that topic was pushed very heavily. That happened in 2006, 2008. So the global warming articles and articles about certain drugs and whatnot would have been changed back then. And then I started noticing around 2010 to 2015 that that articles on Eastern medicine, holistic medicine, which I'm not a big fan of or anything, but they were so obviously biased, using as you've noticed in your excellent monologue opening, that they would use these dismissive epithets, about these ancient traditions that, even though I disagree with them, if I were writing an encyclopedia article, obviously you wouldn't do that. There'd be a separate section maybe about, Western reception of these ideas and whatnot. Anyway, and then I think it really got over the top in the teens, between 2013 and 2018. And by at the time Trump became president, it was almost as bad as it is now. And it's amazing, no encyclopedia, to my knowledge, has been as biased as Wikipedia has been. I mean, that's saying something. I remember being mad about Encyclopedia Britannica and the World Book not mentioning my favorite topics in presenting only certain points of view in a way that establishment sources generally do. But this is something else. This is entirely different. It's over the top. So
I think one of the the reasons why, at least to me, like for me, when I was putting the show together, and I was talking to my team, I was kind of saying, like, on some level, it seems like you could just read these pages. Just like read the page about how they talk about the Ukraine and Biden scandal, which obviously people can disagree on in terms of what the evidence demonstrates, but to just simply declare outright at the start that it's replete with lies, it's a conspiracy theory, it's only designed to undermine Joe Biden, or especially the debate over the COVID pandemic, which simply takes the side of the establishment and Dr. Fauci in a way that not even they would express with such certainty in terms of the truth about what we know about COVID's origins, that would almost be sufficient, because I grew up as somebody who in a school would look to encyclopedias, the pre-internet encyclopedias, and the difference in tone is so obvious. And one of the hypotheses that I have, and I'm wondering what you think about this, is I was comparing earlier the trajectory of Wikipedia to a lot of the trends in corporate media. And to me, what seems to be the case is that in a lot of ways, the emergence of Donald Trump kind of changed everything. As you say, it was really gradual. You can go back before that when kind of the Tea Party movement was emerging in the ears of Obama and people started getting a lot more polarized. But to me, it seems like what ended up happening was the liberal establishment narrative was that Donald Trump was such a once-in-a-lifetime, unprecedented menace that there's no longer anything that can exist independent of ideology and political viewpoints, that even truth has to be subservient to the more important cause of attacking Donald Trump and the movement that formed around him. And a lot of the conventions of journalism have been completely cast aside within a very short period of time. The idea that you don't editorialize as part of narrative, the argument is really now that if you don't editorialize constantly and from the start, you're failing in your job as a journalist, that journalism requires you to constantly describe Trump as an authoritarian and Biden as a decent man. Otherwise, you're not telling the truth. And it seems like a very similar thing has happened in Wikipedia, which is supposed to be an encyclopedia devoted to truth, that the premise seems to be that you don't have truth anymore independent of ideological outlook.
I think you've hit it on the nose. That doesn't really explain, that describes what the problem is. In other words, they take their cues. So it definitely explains it at one level, right? That the rank and file Wikipedians, they take their cues not from, Wikipedia's original neutrality policy or anything like that. They don't care about that at all. They take their cues from basically CNN and MSNBC and the New York Times and whatever whatever those outlets feel comfortable saying. And one also has to remember that they have declared like 80% of the major sources of news on the right to be unreliable officially. It's in their policy at this point. A lot of people don't realize that, but it's true, and that really colors the articles and what the editors allow the articles to say. But the deeper explanation, I think, is, and I guess I'm going to offer a conspiracy theory now, that essentially, I think that the left, it's not a big conspiracy. Everybody knows and believes this, right? The left very, very deliberately seeks out to take control. Except it isn't just the left. We're learning that now, aren't we? Right? This gray zone example that you point out. No, it's the establishment.
Yep.
And they have their own agenda. I'm not going to try to offer any opinions because it's not something that I study as to how they bring that about. but it's clear that between 2005 and 2015, it was on their radar. Wikipedia moved on to the establishment's radar, and of course, we do have evidence that the CIA, even as early as I think was it Virgil Griffiths discovered this in 2008, I think, something like that. That the CIA and the FBI computers were used to edit Wikipedia. And you think they stopped doing that back then? No. And not just them, right? We know that intelligence now, a great part of intelligence is and information warfare is conducted online, and where, if not on websites like Wikipedia, right? So that they pay off the most influential people to push their agendas, which they're already mostly in line with, or they just develop their own talent within the community, learn the Wikipedia game, and then push the what they want to say within with their own people. So that's my take on that.
Yeah, I think the point you raised is a crucial one. It's one I emphasize so often, which is I really do believe now that the most relevant metric for understanding the world, and it's certainly how people are treated, is not so much left versus right, but anti-establishment versus subservient to the establishment. And ultimately, there are people who are more conservative, who are very much aligned with establishment politics. David Frum and Jeffrey Goldberg, the two examples we used, didn't get more liberal over the years. They just became useful to the establishment in a way that some people on the left like gray zone, and I would put even RFK Jr., who's harder to define ideologically, but there's certainly a lot of left-wing views that he has. He's running to Biden's left on the question of whether we should be aggressive toward China. Certainly whether whether we should be supporting the CIA and the military-industrial complex and things like Ukraine. And more than anything, though, he's considered an enemy of the establishment. Let me just ask you about, as one of the last questions, the role of Google in all of this. I mean, I think this is kind of the key, and I wonder, for me, it's kind of a chicken and egg question. I wonder if you can shed some light on it. Obviously, Google is a major part of why Wikipedia has grown significantly in terms of its impact. Is it that Google saw the potential of Wikipedia to become this kind of authoritative, uber authoritative source on the internet and decided to kind of grab it, pump it up in order to be able to influence it? Or was Wikipedia already growing into becoming that? And so Google decided, well, let's kind of ride with it and see if we can kind of redirect it and help control it.
I mean, look, I am not an expert on the inner workings of Google or, for that matter, Wikipedia after I left. So what you say is very plausible. I wouldn't be at all surprised if that were true. But to be honest, I don't know. What I do know is that Google has donated millions of dollars to Wikipedia over the years. Google has, much more importantly, pushed Wikipedia articles, and insofar as people who are in Google or advising Google, investing in Google, want the public to believe certain things, as long as Wikipedia is saying those things, then those articles are going to tend to be pushed to the top. So what we need to do, I have to get this in, what we need to do is to reach into the long tail of all the other encyclopedias. There are other encyclopedias, there are. There's a lot.
Can you talk about them? I know you were involved with one and are involved with one. There are a couple of alternatives that have a different model. Can you just talk people through that?
Sure. A few. A good, explicitly neutral encyclopedia of American politics is called Ballotpedia. It's really good. And Ballotpedia articles, they don't really rank very highly on Google, in my experience. Let's see. Although they can. Let's see, what else? Well, on the right, there is Conservapedia, and on the left, there is what? Rational Wiki. Oh, that's really bad. But anyway, that's an example. There's a lot of others anyway besides Wikipedia. And well, if you really want to see them and search all of them at once, I would say go to encyclosearch.org or encycloreader.org. And what my organization now is doing is collecting free encyclopedia articles from as many sources as we can. It takes time to set up new encyclopedias to be crawled, or at least to be gradually absorbed, which is what we do. But we have 35 and growing encyclopedias in the system, and we are creating an open and free database and network of encyclopedias, essentially. Wikipedia is part of it, so necessarily it's going to be greater than Wikipedia because it's going to include Wikipedia, but a lot more. And if you want to have an experience of comparing real, relatively old-fashioned encyclopedias with really so biased as to be twisted Wikipedia articles, I think that would be a good place to start. Encycloreader and EncycloSearch. And by the way, the software that we are using to aggregate these articles is all open source. You can spin up your own aggregator, and all of the articles are digitally signed, which means that we can prove if somebody has tampered with them, essentially. So this is our we're trying to strike a blow against censorship and control of information by simply making it easier to find all of the other encyclopedias that are out there. And also, well, we've got very soon, like within a couple of weeks, there will be a WordPress plugin where people can push articles that they write on their own blogs, so all across the web, to the Encyclosphere. And then it will appear in, I think we're up to 4 different aggregators at this point.
Well, we will definitely continue to follow the work that you're doing. I mean, of course, the problem is that Google controls with such a stranglehold the most valuable real estate on the internet, and sometimes, of course, that is the great challenge, is kind of wrestling control of the full information away from these big tech companies. But if there's anything for which I have solidarity and empathy, it's somebody who is a co-founder of an organization who thinks they're creating something in order to advance certain values, and then looks at what their creation has become and sees it being the exact opposite of what they think they're creating. And I know from experience that it's sometimes difficult to denounce something of which you're the co-founder because it's part of your legacy. You want it to be something that you're proud of. You want it to be something that made a positive contribution in the world. And I think the fact that you've been willing to step up for so long and be a critic of this thing that you played such a vital role in creating requires a lot of courage, and it's become extremely important that you're doing that. I know I've learned a lot from your critiques. It's kind of attracted my attention to this topic, and I really appreciate your doing that. I appreciate your taking the time to come on and talk to us as well. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.